All right, hi there. This is Dr. Matthew J. Traum. The purpose of this video is to introduce you to the use of Onshape, which is a cloud-based CAD software package. CAD stands for Computer-Aided Drafting. And the neat thing about Onshape is it's accessible totally through an internet-connected browser, so there's no need to load any software onto your computer. And in addition, at least for students and educators, a version of Onshape is free to use. So in this video, we are going to log into Onshape. I'm going to show you guys how to set the dimensions to your preferred dimension system. We're going to draw a simple object, which is going to be a rectangle, a 10 millimeter by 20 millimeter by 30 millimeter cube. And then we are going to manipulate the views so that you can look at a variety of different views. All right, hi there. This is Dr. Matthew J. Traum. The purpose of this video is to introduce you to some of the initial available features on Onshape, which is an online computer-assisted drafting software package available through an internet-connected web browser completely on the cloud. So the neat thing about Onshape is that you do not need to download any software on your computer to use it. And if you are a student or an educator, there's a version of it that's available free to use. So that's the version that we'll be using today in this demo. So what we're going to do in this video is walk through how to sign in to Onshape, how to change the dimensions of your drawing. And we're going to just draw a simple object, a rectangle, which is going to be 10 millimeters by 20 millimeters by 30 millimeters. And then I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you can view it, a couple of different view perspectives that are available through the software. So let's get going. I am, again, assuming that you've already created a Onshape account. So I'm just starting from a generic website here, Google, and I'm just going to type in onshape.com. That'll bring me to the main screen. Again, I'm assuming you've created an account. So we're going to sign into the account that you've created. I'm going to put in my credentials. At this point, you will put in your credentials. There we go. Okay, and this is just sort of some tinkering that I was doing before. If you've not opened the software, your page may be blank. Ignore what's here. I'm just going to go to Create, and we're going to create a new document. And I'm going to just call this Sample Rectangle. You can name yours something similar. And we'll load up a new blank clean workspace. Okay, so very first thing I'm going to do before I draw anything is I'm going to change the dimensions. To do that, I'm going to hover here over Document Menu, which is these three parallel lines next to the Onshape logo. And I'm going to click, and I'm going to go down, Rename, Document Description, Copy Workspace. Here it is, Workspace Units. So click here. And as you can see, the default units are inches, so I'm going to change that to millimeters, at least for purposes of this class. Length display in decimals, 0.1. Angles are going to be in degrees, but they're going to be displayed to, again, to the tenths place. And the default mass unit is going to be kilograms, and that will be displayed to the tenths place. Okay, so once I have millimeters, tenths place for length, degrees, tenths place for angles, kilograms, tenths place for mass, I'm going to click the green checkbox, and now my dimensions are set. So that's the first thing finished. Next thing is to start thinking about how we're going to create this object that I described before. It's going to be a rectangle 10 millimeters by 20 millimeters by 30 millimeters. And Onshape is a sketch-based CAD software package. Sketch-based meaning we're going to draw a cross-section of the object of interest in 2 dimensions, and then we're going to extrude it into the 3rd dimension. So I'm going to go up here to Sketch. This is how I'm going to create the 2-dimensional cross-section of my object of interest. Okay, so it's going to ask me the sketch plane. So notice I've got a front sketch plane, a right sketch plane, and a top sketch plane. And then they are joined at the middle here by the origin, 0, 0, 0. And so I need to pick one of these, so I'm just going to pick the top plane by clicking on it. Once I've done that, I now have access to all of these different geometry producing features. I'm interested in creating a rectangle, so I'm going to select corner rectangle. And with this selected, I'm going to move down here to the origin, and I'm going to put one corner of my rectangle at the origin, hold down the mouse, and I'm just going to slide it outwards to some arbitrary dimensions, and then I'm going to let go. Okay. Notice in the sketch, I have two lines that are black. Those are lines that are fully constrained, and then I have two lines that are blue. Those are not fully constrained lines. We would like to constrain all the lines in our sketch so that they're all appropriately defined. So the way to do that is I'm going to add some dimensions. And notice here, I again just arbitrarily let go of my mouse at this point. This dimension is 61.9. That's the length of that highlighted leg of my rectangle. This guy is 63.9. That's the length of this highlighted leg of my rectangle. And I'm making a 10 by 20 by 30 rectangle, so I want to change those. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to use the dimension tool here. So I'm going to click dimension, and that allows me to click on a leg of the sketch and set dimension. So instead of 61.9 millimeters, I'm just going to select 10 millimeters. Remember, I'm creating a 10 by 20 by 30 millimeter cubed rectangle. So there's 10, and I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm still going to use my dimension tool, and this guy I'm going to set to, whoops, I'm going to click on him, there we go, and I'm going to set him to 20 millimeters. Now, I type in millimeters here just for completeness, because I have the default unit set in millimeters. You don't need to type mm, but for me, it's just force of habit. Okay, so now I've got a 10 millimeter by 20 millimeter rectangular sketch in the top plane. Notice when I set these dimensions that this line, which was blue, and that line, which was blue, both became black, which means they're totally fully constrained, which is great. And now I've got my sketch, which again is just a two-dimensional cross-section of this three-dimensional rectangle that I've been describing. So I can now click the green checkbox, which locks in my sketch. Now I need to make this two-dimensional sketch a three-dimensional object. So the tool that I'm going to use to do that in Onshape is called Extrude. It's right here. I'm going to click Extrude, and I'm going to extrude sketch 1, which was that rectangle. And what Extrude does, it's literally what it sounds like. It takes your two-dimensional object and it essentially just stretches it out in the third dimension. Now, there's a number of different options. If I had more objects here, I could use symmetric or up next or up to face, for example, to define how far I want to extrude. But because I know the dimension of how far I want to extrude, I'm just going to click blind, which allows me to enter the depth of the extrusion process. So right now it's at 25, which is just sort of arbitrary. Remember, I need a 10 by 20 by 30 millimeter cubed object, so I'm going to substitute 25 for 30. I'm going to hit carriage return. Gets a little bit taller. Okay, and now I've got my 10 by 20 by 30 millimeter cubed rectangle, and I'm going to hit the green checkbox, and that's the object that I'm interested in. There it is right there. Okay, so now that we've achieved that, the next thing is to talk briefly about the different viewing planes that you can use to look at this object. And I intentionally chose an object with different dimensions in the top, front, and right viewing planes so you could see the difference. So up here in the upper right-hand corner is the control mechanism that sets how I'm going to be viewing the object that I've created. So if I want to look at the top view, I click here. Now remember, in the top plane, I just created a 10 by 20 millimeter object. So of course, by just looking at the top plane, all I can see is the plane that's 10 millimeters by 20 millimeters. But then I can also rotate this guy to the front plane. That is a rectangle which is 10 by 30 millimeters. Or I can rotate it to the right plane, which is a rectangle 20 by 30 millimeters. If I'm not interested in looking at any of those kind of fundamental Euclidean XYZ planes, I can also click on any one of the corners of this cube to get me, for example, the top right corner, which is the one that I'm staring at here, or maybe the top left corner, right, which is the one there, or the back left corner, and so forth. So those are the principal views according to this cube. Now, I can also access a number of engineering drawing perspectives. So let me just put it to the top view so you can see how dramatic this is. I might, for example, want an isometric representation of my rectangle. So I can click on this little box shape and I can click isometric. Right? So there's my isometric view where I see the top, front, and right planes all at the same time. I can also do a diametric view, which changes the angle very slightly to give you a slightly different perspective, or a trimetric view, which again just changes the angle very slightly to give you a slightly different perspective, or any one of these top views, corner views, side views, so forth. Okay, ooh, now I'm looking at the back. I can also rotate by clicking these arrows, and that rotates the entire object and the reference frame that it's built in. If I want to, if this thing is getting in the way, I can also click on it and pick it up and sort of move it around to get it out of the way. Okay, back to isometric. There we go. Let me zoom in. Okay, so in summary, we've logged into Onshape, shown you guys how to change the dimensions, again, using the document menu. We've created the object that I was describing, which is the 10 millimeter by 20 millimeter by 30 millimeter rectangle, and I've showed you how to change the perspective so you can get different views of the object, both pure plane views, for example, the top, right, and front, or engineering drawing views like an isometric view, for example. Okay, that concludes this tutorial. Thanks for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.